first presenter for the day, and I need to tell you a little story, a personal story about the lady I'm going to introduce. The story is about when we first met her. Several years ago, Terry and I were attending a Horses on the Hill event in Washington, D.C., lobbying against horse slaughter. And we were seated down in the first row. We were going to have a bit of a press conference, and Senator Landrieu was coming, and others were coming. And just as they were beginning, just about ready to start the meeting, this blonde-haired lady came in a frantic thing, started passing out these. Started passing stuff out all up and down. And I turned to Terry and I said, "Now that's one motivated individual." And it hasn't changed because you got handouts again today. But we'd like to thank Simone Netherlands, who is our next guest. She was instrumental in putting together the press conference, and she's always out there in the forefront when it comes to the issue of horse slaughter, and now the special works that they're working with the Salt River Wild Horse Herd. Simone?
Your own money, and there's nothing to gain for you personally with either the demise or the rescue and the welfare of horses. Each one of you has amazing strengths and their own niche and their own expertise, and we need each and every one of you to win this fight. This conference is so important for all of us to be here. We need to make sure that next year we all bring at least 3 people. We advertise this all year long, and we have every single person that calls themselves a horse advocate here. I don't think there is not one person in this room who hasn't made it their personal mission to end the suffering of horses. So you all are the leaders. Even though a lot of us have been in this for a long time, this is still just the beginning. We're the leaders, we're the lieutenants to grow this army. It needs to grow really, really, really big and strong. If they only knew how hard we were fighting for them. I'm glad that a lot of organizations now are working really well together. Thank you to the ASPCA and the Humane Society for being here as well. I think everybody's starting to realize that not one organization or another is going to win this fight. It's going to take all of us together. And by God, we're going to all together get this job done. It might take us our whole lives, but we will get it done. So, every one of us has a personal story, I think, about the day that changed our lives and the day that we all became an advocate. And of course, I have a personal story about that as well, and if you're interested, I will tell you a little bit about that. But maybe first we'll play a little training video. Everybody's always asking me, what the training, this and that. It's much harder to say in words than it is to show, so maybe go ahead and play the video really quick.
Hi, my name is Simone and this is Chalka. Chalka is a horse that I've trained. It's called Freedom Training. Horses are very intelligent, kind, giving, and loyal animals. All they want to do is please people. And when you train them, they know exactly how. When you don't train them, they still want to please people, except they really don't know how. How these wild horses are in nature is just awesome. Their hierarchy, their lifestyle, the way they determine who's boss and who's not boss. And these very principles of how horses talk is what we use in freedom training. If I tell that horse what to do in horse language, he understands. Horse language is basically body language. If I tell that horse in human language, which most people unfortunately do, it's like when you're in France and you don't speak French and somebody's speaking a language to you, telling you, do this, do that, and they start speaking louder and louder and getting angry at you because you don't understand French. So you don't know what to do. So you're standing there and you want to please this person, but you do not know how. And this is usually the relationship that horses have with people. They want to please people, but they are misunderstood. They just don't understand what people want from them. So these training techniques basically speak to them in horse language and teach them commands. I mean, this horse knows over 100 different commands, and a lot of them are just body language. A lot of them is just, I have to do this, that's all I do, and he watches me all the time, and he'll go around me.
Are you doing something with your legs when you were walking him down here?
Yes, so when I'm riding without a bridle or without anything else, all I'm doing is steering him with my legs. So if I want him to go to the left, I touch him with my right leg. I move him over slightly, which is quite a difference, you know, from cowboys that need to have huge spurs and, you know, move a horse over that way. This just teaches the horse not to listen, basically.
Did you actually develop this yourself?
No, I didn't invent it. There's a lot of great natural horsemanship people like Pat Pirelli and Dennis Reese and John Lyons, and there's all kinds of people who do the same kind of thing.
So it seems like it's a new paradigm in horse training.
It is. It's like the ultimate. It's like, you know, the horse has fun. You got to make sure the horse has fun. When you were in class in school, when you were young, you learned the best with the teacher where you had the most fun. You remember the teacher that praised you. Same thing with horses. You can't force a horse, you know, to perform. Well, actually you can, but the horse doesn't learn as fast or learn as much as when the horse is actually having fun performing.
You are a trainer of these wild horses. Why do you do that?
I train wild horses because it makes them more likely to be adopted. Of course, they have a lot of fear. They've been herded up with helicopters, they've been put into chutes, they've been castrated, they've been branded, all without sedation. So they're scared. They have a lot of fear, and all they know is that people are their enemy. Say, yes, I'm a good boy. Yeah. Yeah, you're a good boy, huh?
So I was a horse trainer. I still am. But I used to do it and actually make money at it. And from that point on, I had no clue. I did not know horse slaughter existed. I'm sure all of us were at that point, maybe at one point in our lives. But I had no clue. I lived in Holland all my life. Just had no idea. Until one day I worked at a resort. I managed some departments in a local resort, while at the same time I was importing the Friesians. And one day I was driving to work, and I saw this horse. It was like a beautiful white horse, and it looked like it was in distress. It was on public lands. It was sweating. So I decided to stop the car and see what was up with that horse. There was absolutely nobody around. It was wide open space, and I knew that was, you know, a corner that was public land. So I got out of my car and I watched lasted for a while, and I decided, I called a couple of people, and I called the ag inspector and said, look, there's a horse out here. He's like, oh, well, you know, maybe we'll come look at it later. So the horse was really in distress. I went into the land, and I started kind of finding out what the horse knew, and I worked with him for a couple of hours. It was a beautiful white mare. And we said, you know, and of course once I start doing that, I forget all the time, so I was really late for work. And I think I didn't show up at all that day. But so I worked with her for a couple of hours, got on her. I didn't have, you know, lead rope or a saddle or anything, of course, but my house was probably 5 minutes away by car, and I rode that horse home. It took me about 2 hours to get home on the side of the road without a wagon, without a halter. And it took me about 2 hours to get her there. But it was a horse that was already trained to ride, trained from the start. But anyway, I had never actually owned a horse. I had always trained horses for other people, but never actually owned my own horse. So I took the horse home, worked with it a little more, and I placed an ad in the paper if anybody had lost a horse. I got a couple of responses to that, but nobody really, it was apparently nobody's horse. It didn't have a brand or anything, but it was trained to ride. So I trained that horse a little bit more and got quite attached to her. She was really quite amazing and responding really well. And since I'd never owned my own horse, I was like, wow, you know, I'm going to maybe keep this horse. So I was really excited. And then the ag inspector called me back about a week and a half later. So I worked with her for about a week and a half. She was amazing by that time. And the ag inspector said, I'm going to come pick up that horse. And I was like, well, it's okay. The horse can stay here, you know. And you know, when you find the owner can just come here and pick up the horse, you know, instead of having to take it to some God-forsaken place. He said, no, that's the rule. He said, any horse that's lost, we got to come pick up the horse, and it's got to go through the auction. And I was like, auction? What do you mean? Why does it have to go through an auction? And he said, well, if there's no owner of the horse, and you found it, the horse has got to go through the auction. I was like, okay, I'll just come to the auction. And he goes, well, you buy the horse at the auction. So anyway, so he came with the horse trailer, which I cried when he put it in the horse trailer. It was horrible. And he drove off with the horse. So he tells me the auction is next week. So I go to the auction, and I've never been to an auction at this point. This was about 8 years ago. And I sit through the whole auction, and I'm so excited. I've got my money ready, and I've got my little bidding sign ready, and the whole auction, the horse didn't come through. So at the end of the auction, I go to the ag inspector, and I'm like, where's my horse? She was supposed to come through the auction. And he goes, oh, maybe it wasn't this auction. Maybe it was next week's auction. So I go to next week's auction, sit through the whole auction. Of course not there. I go to next week. I go to 4 or 5 auctions, you know, every next week after next week. I place ads in the paper looking for her. And by being at every auction, I found out that there was one particular guy that bought all the freaking horses. So I sit next to the guy, and I'm like, what do you do with all these horses? He goes, oh, you know, I get rid of them. You know, I help this country get rid of all the unwanted horses. I'm like, really? What do you mean get rid of them? You know, and this is how I found out about horse slaughter. This was our local hill wire. So I asked him if he had bought a white mare, and he had. I'm sorry, I was going to keep it together. Oh my God. I'm sorry.
Okay, we understand.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. You just take a moment.
So that was the day that my life changed. bought a lot of horses. And he was a real asshole. He, mysteriously, every horse he bought, and I never got this, but he would leave a halter and a lead rope on one horse in his pasture, and the next day I got there, the horse would be full of stab wounds. And it's happened like 4 or 5 times, and I took a picture of all the horses with the same wounds. They always had stab wounds everywhere. And this guy literally took pleasure in torturing horses. This guy yelled at his kids. I mean, he abused his wife, his kids. He had a puppy mill, and he was the most god-awful guy. So anyway, I looked up his public records. I looked up everything, and I happened to find out that he had a couple DUIs. So he used to always go to the bar every night, and I used to call the cops on him every night when he was drunk. While he was drunk and seriously injured a person. So because I was keeping an eye on his public records, that the county supervisor actually called me and told me this. And so I was like, hey, you know, I'm going to his court date and everything. So I knew what day his court date was. He had 3 DUIs and he hit that person. But since I was, you know, kind of keeping an eye on him, it was really strange. He was looking like he was packing up. There was, you know, he was buying less horses. One day he took all the horses off his property, started packing up his paneling and everything. I'm like, this guy's leaving. And what do you know, the day before his court date, he packs up and he leaves, and I follow him. And I followed him. So he leaves Arizona, and I follow him almost all the way to Albuquerque. And that's where I lost him. And so I'm still looking for him. His name is Dave Quinn. He's all over my Facebook page. And he might be somewhere in Texas because he's at the auction. And he's doing the same thing, I'm sure. So anyway, that's how I started. So I don't train horses for money anymore. I just train wild horses now. I don't work in a hotel anymore. I have real estate that give me a little bit of income so that I can make this my life purpose. Let's see. Horses, so, you know, with this story, I'm not the only one with a story like this. I'm sure every single one of you has a personal story about the day that you realized that you weren't going to stand for it. And horses are not the only victims. I also have a really sweet old guy in my neighborhood that he was by himself, and he had his horse Bucky that, you know, for 20 years they rode the trails together, and one day this guy, he gets too old and he needs to go in a home. He doesn't have a lot of family. So, you know, the local ag inspector tells him, you know what, you need to go into the home, I'll find you a good home for your horse. Of course, the horse went through auction. And this guy, the old guy, he didn't find out about it until, I mean, and I'm sorry that I actually told him, but I told him, you know, about the auction and about the kill buyer. We have rarely any good homes bidding on it. We have just the kill buyer at our auction. And, I mean, you know, the guy's an old guy. He's all alone in his home, and he stares out the window every day having to think about what happened, how his horse ended up, that he rode, you know, that was his buddy for 20 years. And so it's not just horses that are the victims. I don't know if any of you guys know Sandra Newton and her daughter. They went lobbying with me several times, and you know, she lost her horse Polo. They had a kill buyer pretend that they were a good sanctuary, and you know, they checked to find her horse later. They actually sued the woman. They found out she was a kill buyer. They sued her. That horse was a $30,000 horse, and you know, they gave it to her for free because they were going to retire the horse. And stuff like this happens all the time. The kill buyers bring their little daughters with them to pretend that they're going to go to 4-H and that their daughters want the horses. It's not just the horses that are victims. Maybe you want to put the little lobbying picture on the table where it is or not.
Which picture the?
We don't. It's too complicated. So I put together lobbying trips and started realizing how important legislation is. We're going to win this war, but we need 5 components, and they all act in IONS. It's the 5 ions, eons, whatever. It's documentation, first of all, and you know, Animals Angels is absolutely fabulous at that. You know, before we can educate America, we need the documentation, we need the footage, we need to show what's really happening out there. And anyone can go to their local auction and document what goes on. There is an auction in pretty much every corner. You know, in anybody's neighborhood, all you have to do is find your local auction, livestock auction. The second one is legislation. So I think we all understand the importance of legislation, but what I realized through the lobbying is that, you know, some of us think that, that legislators already know and that they're just not willing, but it's amazing how many legislators have no clue about this. They truly don't know. And if they know a little bit, then it's what they've heard from our opposition. Oh, well, there's too many horses. They hear like 2-3 sentences. They don't have time. They have so many issues on their plate. So it is up to us to educate them. It's up to us to have a personal relationship with your local legislators, to bother them. Go to town hall meetings where they're at. Go to the fundraisers that they're giving. Write your local editor of your newspaper. We are it. We are the hardcore advocates, people who are here, and we need to be doing that, and we need to be motivating everyone else to do that. It's not going to help horses to like a little thingy on Facebook, and that's what most, you know, what a lot of people on Facebook think, oh, I'm going to like this, I'm going to share that. Yay, that's great, but let's be efficient and effective with our time, because there isn't all that many of us, or not enough anyway. So we need to use every minute that we have as efficient that we possibly can. So the third one is litigation. You know, and thank you for the attorneys that are here. And even though it looks like sometimes we may not be winning right away, it is making a difference. This is chipping away at the BLM. They don't want to spend all this money on lawyers. It is working. They have to spend money defending themselves. The fourth one is education. There's a great institute for humane education. They actually go to schools, they educate kids, they, you know, that's imperative that we teach our young kids, and we have a couple of, you know, awesome young advocates, but it's imperative that we get education out there in schools, and that we don't just make it graphic, but that we make it beautiful, that we make it fun, that we make this a good, fun purpose for kids to be in. Any one of us can take an ad out in a newspaper or in a local horse magazine. Then the fifth one is media attention, and that is possibly the most important one. So when we did our press conference in Oklahoma City, and the Humane Society was there, Scott Beckstead, RT was there, Ginger was there, and we were there because the Summit of the Horse was going to be there. And luckily they canceled, they didn't have enough attendees, so that was good, but we were still there. And they actually helped us get all the press there. We had Fox, we had every news channel there, which is really great. But now the Oklahoma press was very, very much pro-slaughter. They had only heard of their legislators there that are really trying to push for reopening horse slaughter plants. But these were good people, and like Victory mentioned, they have no clue. The press, they heard 1 or 2 words, and then they think they can write an article about it, which is usually not going to be in our favor. So by doing that press conference, this lady from Channel 4, she had done an awful piece before, awful, and I was already like, really, do you really believe that? And she said, yes, I'm so concerned about these stopping horses and these neglected horses, and it's just awful, and there's just going to be more if we don't have horse slaughter. And so she came to the press conference, and she's the one who did that great piece. I mean, she stayed, I mean, it was long, right? We had like an hour-long press conference. And a lot of people asked questions. And she's like, oh, she goes, now I get it. And those people are never going to do a bad story again. We got Oklahoma covered. You know, one press conference, and they're never going to do a bad story again. And I wish we could do it in every single state. That's what we need to do, because the press is so important. Okay, so now I get to my next point. So then I started documenting wild horses. And then I got all outraged about that. So I work together. So do any of you know Kudo in Miami, Animal Recovery, what he does? Well, he does amazing work. He used to be a real estate investor, and then he started volunteering for the ASPCA, and he had a day like I had. What?
South Florida SPCA.
There you go. So, yeah, he works with South. That's where he actually started volunteering at the South Florida PCA. And so he had a day like I did, saw a horse that just changed his life. That horse was Freedom's Flight. He now owns that horse. It was probably the worst abused horse anybody has ever seen. And I think from that day on, he hasn't done another thing, hasn't bought another house. And that guy, literally on his own, decided he wasn't going to stand for it. And he's closed over 80 illegal horse slaughter farms in Miami by himself. So I visited him one day, and from that point on, we kind of decided we're going to help each other. You know, he helps me with certain projects, I help him with certain projects. He is really good at certain things and really bad at others, and so am I. I'm really good at certain things and really bad at others. So we were driving to Twin Peaks, actually. You guys were there too, and we were going to, you know, document Twin Peaks. That was horrible. How many horses they took from there. And that was with the tours, actually. At that point, I didn't know it was going to get worse than with the tours, right? I mean, it got worse. So anyway, on our way there, we're driving, and we kind of fight like brother and sister. We're kind of like, you know, we work really well together, but so we're driving, and I'm like, I think I see horses over there. We're driving by this beautiful, beautiful lake in Hawthorne, Nevada. And I see a whole bunch of dots way in far behind the lake. He's like, no, it goes over cows. I'm like, all right, you know. And, you know, we drive like 2 minutes. I'm like, no, I think we should turn around. I don't think they were cows. And we had a 40-foot fifth wheel behind us. And so, how much more time do I have?
You're good.
Am I okay? Okay, so we had the fifth wheel behind us. He's like, if I'm going to turn this damn thing around, those better be horses. So I was like, turn it around. So we turned it around. It took us maybe an hour, literally, to turn the thing around. We parked way illegally beside the road. We take everything out, we put our boots on, and we get out there. And we go through this swamp like you won't believe. We track through the dirt, and we get closer and closer. And I'm like, they're horses! And so we're all excited, but we can't literally believe how many horses there are. That's why we thought they were cows. Because there is, we know the number now, but it looked like thousands to me, but it's 110 horses. So anyway, we document them. We stay there all day till it gets dark, then we have to track through the swamp. I lost both my shoes in there. He lost his camera. He's like, go find the camera before it's dark. We're yelling at each other, and it's like, so, but then we're like, I wonder whose horses these are. Is this BLM land? Where are we? Are these horses slated for removal? I'm like, well, I'm sure they're fine, you know. I mean, they look so happy. We can see them here. Anyway, I looked it up, and they were slated for removal 3 weeks later. They were designated feral because they didn't have an HMA, and they were half on BLM land and half on military land. So I was like, no way. And we had spent so much time with these horses, and they're such an amazing herd, and we looked at each other and we said, no, that's going to have to be over our dead body. already pretty much loved their horses. And then I had to prove that they were there in 1971. Like, how are these horses not going to be there? It's a giant lake, of course there's going to be horses there. So I searched and searched and searched. I didn't get any sleep. I kept searching through the Library of Congress articles, historical articles, until I found an article that literally said that there were thousands and thousands of horses at Walker Lake, and this was an article from 1928. And it also stated, these are not domestic horses. These horses have been free from bridle and rein for at least 8 generations. And this was in 1920, so that effectively proved that they had been there for over 250 years. Of course, we all know they've been there for longer than that. But that effectively proved that in 1971, when they were supposed to give them an HMA, they did not. And they weren't hard to find. So my suspicion is that, you know, in 1971, when the B-11 Forest Service was supposed to assign territories and herd management areas, they either didn't notice a lot of horses, or they just did not want to give them their HMA in the pretty areas that they thought were good for people. So I wrote a proposal. Carla Bowers helped me with that, with all the grammar check and stuff. And my arm was broken at the time, so it was typing with 2 fingers. And since it was only 3 weeks that we had, we were in a really big hurry. But we wrote a 48-page, very comprehensive proposal that took care of every single excuse they had to round up those horses. We had, first of all, we had the reasons in there why they were of value to the area. We had realtors write letters, how it improved, you know, the financial value of the homes. We talked about aesthetic value, financial value, emotional value, educational value, historical value, scientific value, and we placed it all out. Then their excuse was they are a public safety hazard. There were horses that were hit on the road. Like, what year do you think they invented fences in? You know, literally. Fences. So we wrote that in our proposal. We gave them an estimate of how much it would cost to put a fence by the road. And we said, if you don't pay for it, we'll find the volunteers and we'll pay for it. Also, and then the last chapter in that proposal states exactly how it would be allowed. Yes, they can make a new HMA if they wanted to. They have that authority. We hit all the sections where it says, you know, you can make an HMA. So anyway, then we got CNN involved, and they did a 5-night special on the Walker Lake herd, which is really good. So we put some pressure, but we gave them the option to be the good guys. And then a week before the roundup, the executive order got signed to round up the horses. So we were like, just really nervous. The executive order got signed. Then we went and we held an official meeting and we handed them over the proposal, and we had 100 people protesting outside. There's only 300 people in that community and 100 of them showed up to protest. And a lot of organizations out of that area too as well. So we handed them the proposal. We still didn't think it went that well because the meeting was a little, you know, it was a little tight atmosphere. But one day before the roundup, they called me up and they said, we accepted your proposal. So part of that proposal was us managing the herd instead of them. We made it easy for them, you know, let us manage the herd. And so what we do as a management group, which is just 5 or 6 people that are local, is we document the horses. We have a picture of each and every horse, which one is which band, who's the lead stallion, who's getting born, who's dying, etc., etc. So it's at 110 horses right now. They're doing really well. And guess what? The BLM even put up a fence. So we are repeating that same process, since it seems to be a process that works. We're going to repeat that at the Salt River herd, and so maybe you want to play that video.
my gosh, it's so awesome documenting these guys. You know, normally when we document wild horses, we're like way out in the boonies, acres and acres. We have to have 4x4s and go tracking them, and you know, then you still have no guarantee that you're going to see any wild horses at all. And here people can just get on the river, and it hasn't been a day where I haven't seen horses. All the beautiful herd dynamics, the talking together, how the lead stallions really take care of their bands, and word has really gotten out. And all these people we talk to, they love their horses, and everybody's just so excited when they've seen a horse on the river. So yeah, it's a beautiful opportunity for any wild horse advocate, for any, you know, tourist to come out here. And there's not an opportunity like this anywhere in America to see wild horses in their natural behavior, the way they've been here for over 500 years.
Okay, so it came up from the bottom of the river, and it's basically the main diet of the horses on Salt River. It's probably a pretty good diet. And then over here, part of their diet is also the reeds that grow along the riverbanks.
over there. He's the cutest little baby. It's about 2 to 3 days old, max.
Horses were a cool sight. We enjoyed that seeing them.
They're awesome.
We come here every week, every Saturday, and they're here almost every single Saturday, and we see usually 2 or 3 sightings of them. Really enjoy them.
Coming from Michigan, you don't see that very often, you know, so coming to Arizona, that's kind of one of the things that kept me here.
Wild horses are out there in the wild, just like skunks or raccoons or anything.
That's like saying round up all the wild animals.